When something's really extreme, I don't think it has to go for a long time. It doesn't have to stick around because it just takes so much energy just to listen to it. It's more powerful in with brevity, I think.
Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name is Brandon Hayden. I play bass and do vocals in a band called Endorphins Lost.
And Brandon, how would you describe the music of Endorphins Lost?
It's like pretty manic, furious hardcore. Some people call it power violence. I just kind of call it punk on speed.
Would you say that punk on speed, as you described it, you still have a lot of like metal and grindcore type influences?
Yeah, of course. We like all that stuff. I just try and write music that sounds like lyrics. The content of the lyrics sound or feel. I usually write lyrics first, and then I'll try and write music that complements the sentiment.
Interesting. And we can talk about that in more detail when we talk about how songs come together for you guys. One thing I should mention is that Endorphins Lost came to Malaysia in, I believe, the end of 2012.
Yeah, it was that winter, because over there that's the best time for bands to come. It's not just excruciating. I mean, it was excruciating, but that's the best time. Yeah.
Honestly, there is no good time for bands to come, but we appreciate you guys coming.
Yeah, it was a blast. It was a blast.
And you were in the band at the time?
Yeah, I've one of the original members of the band.
Cool. So I met you guys briefly at Ruma Api, where we have that yearly festival.
Yeah, that show was crazy. That was awesome. It was such an honor to be there, knowing the whole history about the place and everything. It was really cool to play.
And you guys did a second show a few days later, right?
Yeah,
I remember there's like a New Year's Eve show.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we did.
That was somewhat in my neighborhood, or close enough that I could walk home after the gig. It was a little rehearsal studio, right?
Yeah, okay. So my memory is coming back about it now. Yes, it was. Played in a jam studio with a band called, I think that Busek played that show. Definitely Turson Jung 13 played that show because we were on tour with them. But that was pretty cool. I just remember one dude was rocking so hard and he kept grabbing my microphone and using it kind of like his crutch. And I play bass and vocals, so I'm like trying to sway back and forth with him so that I can be heard. I remember getting a couple of my teeth chipped from that experience, but it was a good time. It's a good time.
You mentioned that you were one of the founding members of the band. Can you tell me originally what your intentions were? Like what led you guys to forming?
Yes. Well, there was very much an intention. A lot of people just, oh, let's start a band just because. Me and the guitar player in Endorphins, his name is Chris. We were in a band called Streetwalker from Seattle, and we played our respective instruments in that band too. And at the time, I was going, just as an exercise, I want to play guitar, but I don't know. I've always been a person that I play better when I'm under the pressure of like, playing a show or jamming with people it's easier to do than just trying to learn songs in my bedroom or write songs or something. So I wanted to play guitar, and the guitar player in Streetwalker wanted to play drums more. So we went, well, why don't we just start a band? Maybe it won't go anywhere, but at least it will get us practice on these other instruments that we want to play. I had a drum set and, guitar gear and stuff and a place to jam. So we started doing it just as a two-piece. And I had just left a band called Scourge Schematic, which is like a grindcore band. And we didn't have a bass player. So we'd kind of have a setup like, I don't know, like early ASSEC or Magruder Grind or something, where it was just like bass gear involved in it too. So, you could have a thicker guitar sound. We started doing that, and kind of right from the beginning, we were both trying to do vocals, and then we decided maybe we want a vocalist so we could more so focus on our instruments because we sucked at both of them. And so our friend Carrie, who was in a band called Asymmetric Warfare, it was a pretty cool like political punk band. He immediately was like, yeah, hell yeah, I'd love to do that. So we kind of started with the concept of just focusing the band on like mental health issues, that kind of thing, kind of interesting to us. And played for a while just like that as a three-piece with no bass. And we were kind of tired of putting our energy into something and sucking because we could only get so good at these instruments. So then we kind of decided, well, me and Chris, why don't we just play the instruments that we're good at and find a drummer? And then the band kind of evolved from there. I think that when you saw us in 2012, we just had one guitar, me on bass, drummer and vocalist. But then we ended up with two guitar players, and then that was just kind of became our sound. When we locked in with that, we were able to do. Problem with that is the music styles change when you have too many, I don't know, tools at your disposal. So our first couple LPs, they had like more of a metallic sound, I would say, as because they had like harmonies and stuff like that. Kind of had a little more metallic thing going on. But as we refined our sound over time, figured out how the best ways to use two guitars and make it not sound like metal grind kind of stuff. So starting to find our sound now. But yeah, that was a long way to explain that we just wanted to play different instruments, and we played in our primary band, and that's basically what started it off.
Now, other than a desire to play different instruments, did you guys have a good idea of what kind of music you wanted to make? Like, was it always going to be this furious punk, verging on power violence grind kind of thing?
Yeah, yeah. The bands I really cut my teeth with are on, as far as just more extreme music than say like Dead Kennedys or something, was Power Violence. I mean, one of the first bands I ever heard was Capitalist Casualties, and I just loved it. That was an early concert that I went to as well, and it really kind of changed my mind about things. The Hail of Rage stuff, I don't know if you're familiar, but that was a band in the 90s out of Connecticut, the East Coast, and that was really kind of game changing for me as well. And all that stuff had that kind of Power Violence, real manic start and stop flavor to it. And it just really appealed to me. I just, when something's really extreme, I don't think it has to go for a long time. It doesn't have to stick around because it just takes so much energy just to listen to it. It's more powerful in with brevity, I think. So it appealed to me right from the jump to do that kind of sound. And in our primary band at the time, Streetwalker, I was trying to do that, but I couldn't I couldn't make everybody on board in the band want to do that. The drummer actually coincidentally was the brainchild of the band I previously mentioned, Hail of Rage. And so, to him, I'm going, this is what I want to do when we started Streetwalker. And he kind of goes, yeah, I did that already. I did that I did that Power Violence thing when it was first starting in the 90s. He's a bit older than us. And so it's kind of boring to him. But to me, I mean, that's all I want to hear when I listen to hardcore. Short, fast, and loud.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said something that I don't think I've ever heard on this podcast before, which is you write your music to your lyrics, or the lyrics come first before you start writing the songs.
Yeah. Yeah. Almost every time I end up I'll write something down that I'm just feeling or thinking or something that I've experienced. A lot of the lyrics are, very personal to my life. And then when I decide that I want to commit it to being music, I just write this stuff down, just my mind on paper. It's not in stanzas, it's not set up as verses or lyrics or anything. But then when I decide that I want to commit it to something musical, I'll reread it and kind of re-experience it, and then kind of write music that kind of like a score. It sounds like the words feel when I read them or say them. So sometimes you get these sludgy, drony songs, and sometimes you get this really, really like frenetic, manic kind of stuff. And that's all just kind of how I interpret what it is that I wrote as far as words. Sometimes I write the stuff, years beforehand or something. It just really depends. But yeah, I think that's, people I talk to at least, that's kind of backwards to how most people would write music.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing about that is in a lot of bands, the guy writing the music or the guys writing the music are different from the guy who comes up with the words. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why the words usually come later in the process for most bands. I'm curious, the version, what you write down, these original ideas, how close are they to what you sing on the albums? If I look at the lyric sheet for one of your songs, is that going to be pretty close to what you originally wrote down?
Yeah. So I'm not really a fan of like a rhyming scheme per se, something like that. So, when I just write the stuff initially, it's like writing a letter. You wouldn't just cut parts out of a letter. You wouldn't redact parts out of a letter to read to somebody. It wouldn't make any sense. So I typically will, if anything, just kind of make it shorter. I mean, if once I committed to words or word, lyrics for a song, if anything, I will just take kind of redundant feelings, redundant lines of the words out, where it's just expressing the same feeling. But I would say, yeah, it's pretty close to the same same stuff that I wrote when I originally wrote it. There's usually not a lot of edits going on there.
I'm curious if you have any kind of like art or poetry background, because what you're describing, it almost sounds like, what the beatniks used to do, or some of the art movements that came up with esprit corps. Do you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah.
exquisite corpse, where there's this there's this one element and then it builds to a different element, but those two things are not necessarily conscious of each other. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's sort of like an existential exercise. No, I don't really come from anything like that. I just always kind of done that because I was a vocalist before I ever played an instrument. And so words always kind of were real important to me. With the hardcore, when I started listening to punk and things like that, I'd always read the lyric sheet. I always thought it was really interesting what they were talking about. And sometimes I'd read it and I just didn't like the band anymore because it was just stupid lyrics about, stupid things. And now that I've gotten older, I can appreciate stupid things more, but like silly, tongue-in-cheek silly music was never really my thing. I thought that, if you have the control of having a microphone, say something important, then again, it kind of toes a line because nobody wants to be preached at either. So I kind of took a middle ground and I just started writing about things mostly that I've experienced in my life, things that I feel like I can actually weigh in on because I know what I'm talking about. I mean, you know, lyrics about global oppression and things like that, bands, I mean, always punk music was protest music and raising awareness to something, but oftentimes nobody's doing anything. No one's doing anything about whatever they're talking about. So to not get stuck into that kind of hole of just seeming like a hypocrite, I just ended up writing about my own life, my own experiences a lot. And a lot of those things kind of fall into the vein of what the band initially started out as, which was kind of writing about like mental health and mental awareness, things like that. So kind of went hand in hand. And I guess from the beginning, it was sort of by design.
Yeah. And also, if you're writing about your own experiences, nobody can tell you you're wrong, right? Like, I think
exactly. You're never wrong. And that's good. I don't like being a jackass later down the line. Going, whoops, certain things are just not timeless. And when you write about your own experiences, it's.
I mean, you talked about the Dead Kennedys. Like, I love the Dead Kennedys and I love Jello, but how many songs about Ronald Reagan or Jerry Brown?
Yeah, exactly.
Really resonate this many years later, right?
For sure. And I will walk back what I said about tongue-in-cheek music. I mean, that's all the Dead Kennedys is. It's just exploiting the absurdity of whatever they're talking about in the most wackadoo, silly way. And I love it. Love it, love it. I always will love that band and stuff like that. But it's just, I can't write like that. I don't know how. And it's not timeless. I mean, if you were, it's kind of cool. It's a point in time. Somebody can go, who's Jerry Brown? And they can look it up because of that song or look up, the Reagan administration. But I don't know. I want something that's a little more lasting, that someone, it's kind of more like a blues song or I'm talking old country Western song about, heartbreak or loneliness. Those people are in the Delta or in the Appalachian Mountains or whatever. They know what they're talking about when they're talking about feeling so alone you could die. Writing stuff more from the heart. That's the only way I really know that I can write something and feel good about, performing it every night at least.
Yeah. And as far as writing about mental health, has this been the overarching concept to all the music, or do you also get into other stuff?
Yeah. I mean, we'll get into different themes. Like on this newer record, we have some songs about history, historical events and things, but it always comes back to the overarching concept of who's making these decisions and why are these people in charge to make the decisions for a whole nation kind of kind of thing. So it always comes back to the idea of the overarching idea of at least morality or humanity, and the concept of having, some type of moral fabric that would keep you from doing certain things. I mean, I say this all the time, but it's like, there's all this stranger danger, what for very valid, all the mass shootings and the horrible things that happen all the time. But we drive, I mean, when you get in a car, the person next to you is a stranger. You have no idea what they're capable of or what they're going to do. That kind of thing just fascinates me. I go, what is it, the difference between knowing a person's name or just seeing a person, out in the world doing something sketchy, and it's scary because they're a bit of a mystery. How is that different than driving down the freeway next to all of these people who could just go off at any time? I don't know. I could write a whole album just on the mistrust of other people.
Yeah, and maybe that'll be the next album.
It probably will.
So let's talk about Night People. This is your latest album, which is coming out on February 3rd through Rotten to the Core Records and To Live a Lie Records.
Yes.
Would this be your third album or your third full length?
Yeah, third full length. We've done a bunch of splits and EPs and stuff, but this is our third LP.
So when did you actually start working on this?
I typically try and write music so that we're staggering releases, meaning that the first LP came out, and by the time we were touring, I was already writing the songs for the second LP. That way, by the time our whole support, let's say year of supporting the first record has been done, we're recording the next one, just so that we're always have something current going on. I think I was writing these songs in 2019. I seem to remember telling the band about some of the new stuff that I was writing when we were in the East Coast on our Maryland Death Fest tour. And yeah, that was 2019. So started kind of putting these songs together back then, and the pandemic kind of slowed some aspects of it down. So yeah, it's been in the making for some time.
The pandemic just slowed the parts where you could actually get together with your band, right?
Yeah. I live exactly. I live 4 states away, so that makes kind of a complication too. So what ended up happening was I flew the guitar player and the drummer down here. One of the guitar players, Chris, and the drummer Brian down to my house in Arizona, where I have a studio in my home, and we tracked all of the songs and then sent it to our other guitar player, Sam, and he tracked the stuff, his guitar parts on his own. We were never in the same room ever throughout the entire creation of Night People. So that alone, knowing that, I mean, to me, that's a kind of a proud moment for me, just that I play with guys that are committed enough and they're good enough at what they do that we were never all in the same location, and it still turned out the way that it did. So it's pretty cool.
How would you compare Night People to your previous albums? What would you say makes this one different?
This one's a little different because it's more pissed. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's got more furious riffs going on, in that it's just, they're not real intricate riffs in any way. They're pretty primal sounding. I don't know. It's a little less moody. It's more just one mood. It's just always out to get you. Whereas the other albums, they'd have these kind of, I don't want to say mysterious parts, but just parts that had a little more texture and stuff to them. And this album, another thing that really makes this album a little more pissed sounding is Brian's drumming. He did a lot of this stuff, all single foot blasts, which I don't know if people really nerd out on this so much, but
oh, believe me, this podcast is all about nerding out about blast beats.
Yeah. So just over the years, I've really kind of locked in with this idea that I really don't want to play a lot of riffs that are faster than my drummer can play single foot blasts, because they just become they become so fast that it just sounds like a blur. I want there to be chunk to the riff, and Brian, he really kind of embraced that when I told him that, and that's kind of what I was looking for in these songs, and he laid into that hard, and I think that it just made the songs just more like vicious sounding. Every song I don't really know. There's a lot of songs that are over 2 minutes, aside from the very last song, because it's a closer, but they're just, I don't know. they're in and they're out. And when I listen to them, it makes me want to just fight somebody. And that's it. That's what I want. That's, I want it to be not like jock hardcore or something. It's just like evokes an emotion for me as the writer, which is I just want to destroy something. Whereas the other records, they were kind of they would go in different directions. They're a little more dynamic, I guess, in a way. This one's just it's always mad all the time. And that's how I felt when I wrote the song. So mission accomplished.
So as you mentioned, you recorded the album yourself. Do you have your own studio?
Yeah, I don't really call it a studio because I don't know what I'm doing. I just turn knobs till things sound good. But yes, I've been since the pandemic kind of inspired me with all of my bands to just take a hand at recording, because if I can get it at least demo quality good enough, then that can really help, especially that I live so far away from the Endorphins guys. If I could utilize that much, then it would be worth it. But it's exceeding my expectations. I've learned a lot, and I'm feeling more confident about recording.
It's interesting. I spoke to a band a couple days ago who expressed something similar, where one of the members had a studio or at least a home recording setup, and they recorded basically temp tracks, like the demos for the album.
Yeah.
And listened back to them, and they're like, we could actually just release this, and the record company was stoked on it, and so they just kind of went with that version. I think that's something that I'm hearing about or seeing happen more and more often. It's definitely a benefit to having a band member who has either like a basement recording studio or like his own setup where you can track things.
Well, there's something to be said about it. For me, it's a point of pride that I can listen to a record if it sounds good, especially, and go, I not only wrote this stuff, I recorded it too. It's cool. And it just kind of leans back into the DIY ethos. Just figure out how to do it to where it sounds like you. If you're the engineer, it's going to sound like how you want it to sound.
Yeah.
Now, granted, this record, I didn't mix this record. I sent it to our friend Greg Wilkinson at Earhammer in Oakland to mix it. But oh boy, that's the next step. Take on the monster task of trying to mix the stuff and make it sound huge.
And that's a point I made on this podcast before, which is, a lot of the times when you're hearing a finished album, what you're actually hearing is, the studio or the engineers or the guy who mixed it and mastered it. That's their art, that's their expertise.
Right.
When you hear like a demo or even like a rehearsal room recording, that's the band. That's how they actually sound.
Yeah, and in this kind of music, that's what everybody always remembers, right? Oh yeah, that first demo, or whatever, the first EP rips. The LP's cool, it's more polished, but what do you go back to? 9 times out of 10, people I talk to, they go back to the early stuff, the more raw stuff. And I would agree with that. That's what you're going to get live. It's not going to be polished, not with a punk band. I mean, not at Room AP, not in some basement. It's gonna sound like fucking Vietnam. It's gonna sound insane.
I mean, all due respect to the guys at Room AP, but do you remember what their soundboard was? I think there were 4 mixers on it.
Jeez. Oh my God. Yeah, I just was glad that I wasn't getting electrocuted or something from bad wiring.
Yeah, when you're playing squats and DIY shows, there isn't a lot of like front of house action going on. You basically you get what you get.
Right. Well, and then when you're a band that just lives within that world, it's really weird when you have to play a hi-fi club, and you go, okay, well, what do you want in your monitors? I never trust monitors to ever even work. So I don't know. I'm lost. I don't know what I want. I want to just play. Don't ask me. Just, make it sound good.
So I do need to correct myself a little bit. just because I'm going to get some heat from this. For the festival that you guys played,
Yeah.
Chaos at Rumapi, I do know that those guys hired an outside PA. Our friend Tom, who also is an engineer and has his own studio, he brings over a lot of expensive equipment so that the band sound good during the festival. But normally, it's our friend Sidith who has this very small mixing desk, which only has about 4 or 5 mixers on it.
Right, right. Well, and I will say I recall from that, and there's actually video from on YouTube of that show. I recall being able to play with no sonic issues, and watching the YouTube video. It sounds like falling bombs, but it's not in any part because of the sound production. It's just the music in kind of a cavernous room. It just sounds loud and whatever. But yeah, it was cool. Our experience there was fantastic. No issues.
Is this the first album or the first Endorphins Lost album that you recorded yourself?
Yeah. The last 2 LPs we recorded in Oakland with Greg Wilkinson at Earhammer Studio. And we were really, really happy with the results. But considering the pandemic and the timing and everything, we just went, well, we're going to save ourselves an arm and a leg and really time by just trying to do this ourselves. Worst case scenario, I just send it off for Greg to mix remotely So we never even have to go into his studio or get on an airplane or anything like that. And it just worked out the way that we went, okay, we want his, flavor on the record so that it was consistent with the last two. So I tracked everything and then sent it to him to mix and master. And I'm real happy with it.
Did Greg give any feedback or any advice on the engineering side or the recording side?
Unpack that a little bit. What do you mean?
Oh no, I'm just curious because I know somebody who worked with Kurt Ballou from Converge.
Yeah,
but they recorded their own. They recorded on their own. They recorded in their own studio, and Kurt just gave some helpful feedback as far as like, what to look for in terms of like the basic tracking and recording the drums and stuff like that.
Oh, gotcha. No, I've, in my journey and trying to record on my own and being in enough studios, especially Greg's studio, I kind of knew what I wanted to do and what would work. So I don't know, that made me feel good too. When I sent him the tracks and stuff, he went, nope, I can work with all this. It's all perfect. Okay, cool. You got your DIs, you got all the overheads are in the right place where they weren't totally out of phase on the snare, etc. So it was pretty much just send it to him and wait for him to do his wizardly work and send it back. Pretty simple operation.
And as far as his role in mixing and mastering, what do you like about working with Greg?
Well, he can get a really huge sound, like a wall of amps kind of sound, with it not compromising the fact that this is like a power violence band. I guess what I mean is that, so Greg is in a band called Brain Oil. He's now in Autopsy. He's done a lot of work for like Graves at Sea and these heavy bands, these doom bands or whatever. And he sort of has this sound where you can get this real nice warmth and just really wide sounding, tracks. But when I listen to like a power violence record or something, that's not usually what you're hearing. It's usually a little more like, I guess, surgical or punchy or something. So Greg's
more in your face, right?
Yeah. And working with Greg, we've done quite a few records with him at this point. We've just kind of developed a rapport where it's super easy to just, okay, this is in an endo record. Okay, I know kind of, it's like he already is an intuitively thinking about what the production is going to be like. And it's just nice that we can have this real like fat, heavy sound, but it's not compromised by the fact that the band's really fast and stuff like that. That's usually a production that you would get with Death Doom or Sludge or something.
Right. And he thinks of the sound without making you guys sound like Heartwork or something like that, right?
Yeah. I think that I don't know. It's hard to be objective because I'm in the band, but I think that it represents our sound in a way that's not too far afield from the live sound, So that's another thing, is that a lot of guys who'll engineer records, they'll try and produce it in a way that it is just not representative of what the band sounds like when you go watch them. And Greg's real good about kind of bringing out the best qualities of you, making you sound cool, but not, cheating an audience with some kind of real, fancy production or something, which I like. I like that a lot. Typically, you're supposed to be really wowed by the live performance. So if the record is just a certain way, and then you go to play and you're like, yeah, hey, these are just guitars, bass, and drums. There's nothing special here. Then you got a problem if the record sounds better than you sound live. But he's got a pretty transparent, I don't know, I would say that his production style is like if you were to play a real hi-fi club and just get a live cut where you actually didn't screw up every song. You know, it's pretty transparent, I guess.
Through our conversation, you've mentioned the live performance and the way you guys sound live a few times. Is that really important to you, that the recordings are consistent with the way you perform and what people can expect when they come see you?
Yeah, very much. You know, if we record something a certain way with a certain beat or something like that, we don't deviate from it. So, in other words, if down the line I want to change something a little bit on a song, well, it's recorded like this. You know, it's recorded like this. That's how we're going to play it. We try to make it pretty concrete when we record it, which kind of can bite you in the ass sometimes if you think about it later and the song could evolve. You know, you go, well, I wish we would have done this. I guess since we recorded it this way and we're not going to change it, we'll just write it out of the set list and put some other song that we like in its place. So, yeah, we try and keep it pretty accurate, you know, to the recordings.
So by the time people hear this podcast, Night People will be out through Rotten to the Core and To Live a Lie Records. Brandon?
Yeah.
How can people order the album?
Well, you can order from either of those record labels, tolivealie.bandcamp.com. You can order from Rotten to the Core Records.bandcamp.com, or you can order it from us if you are so gracious, which is endorphinviolence.bandcamp.com.
Now, are the two labels that you're partnered with putting out physical releases for this?
Yes. Yeah. I'm actually looking at them right now. We got colored vinyl and black vinyl. My wife called the colored vinyl Thousand Island color, like the Thousand Island dressing. It's pretty gross, mixed kind of splatter pattern. It's pretty cool. They're all different.
Righteous.
Yeah. And then I don't want to speak too soon or say names, but I'm pretty sure that our friend in Southeast Asia is going to be putting out a tape version at some point of Night People. So it might be easier for people in that side of the world to order directly from him. And once we, you know, can uncover the mystery about these things and officially announce them, we will do that on our social media where you can order it in Southeast Asia.
Very cool. And if people want to follow Endorphins Lost online, what's the best way to do that?
You can look us up on Instagram. We're the only Endorphins Lost out there. So you can look us up there, find us on Facebook, Bandcamp, YouTube, Spotify. Yeah, pretty much anywhere you would look for something, we are the only Endorphins Lost out there. So take a look. The internet is a weird place, and you'll find our weird music.
Cool. Is there anything else you want to say?
Well, we really appreciate the time. We appreciate the people that come out to the gigs, because DIY hardcore, it's completely elective. You don't have to do it. It's certainly not cool. So, you know, you're not getting any cool points by being there. We know the people that come out, they come out because they want to, and we appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Brandon.
Thank you.